I'd say the toughest thing about being a kid in the 90s is the pressures that we have to face with drugs and just peer pressure.
The epidemic about drugs and teenage pregnancy.
Feeling that you're accepted by others, by your peers.
The hardest thing about being a what? That's a lot of questions.
I feel that adults just say, oh, she's a teenager, and that's it, you know. A problem child. All teenagers are considered problem child, so.
Feeling that people think that you were stupid or dumb or whatever, you know, or...
Dealing with puberty.
Probably responsibility. That's not really one of my strong suits, and my parents get on me about that sometimes.
A geek or a dork or whatever you want to call it, you know.
They embarrass me a lot, and I don't like to. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to say that they're my parents.
I don't like adolescence because he's feeling out of control.
You know, whenever my sister and I get into arguments, she always gets on me about it, saying it's my fault that I should learn to control myself.
His hormones are starting to kick in.
And going from just not worrying about what your buddies thought about you, but what girls thought about you.
He's starting to pull away, separate into his own territory.
I think when I was younger, I listened to pretty much everything my parents said. And now that I'm older, I don't really cooperate with him.
I don't like it. I want him on my territory where I can control it.
Welcome to Parenting Adolescence, an 8-session small group study from NAV Press. This program is designed for use with the discussion guide and the book Parenting Adolescence by Kevin Huggins, both of which come with this package and are essential to your successful participation in this study. They contain additional valuable information, challenging ideas, and discussion questions. Parenting Adolescence features Kevin Huggins, Director of Adolescent Counseling at the North Coast Family Foundation. Kevin also founded the 2-year training program for parents of adolescents at the Chapel in Akron, Ohio. The series is hosted by Jim Hancock, Youth Director at the Solana Beach Presbyterian Church in California, and the co-author of the book, Good Advice for Teenagers. In this series, we'll present interviews with parents and teenagers, discussions with Jim and Kevin, and dramatic vignettes that illustrate some of the most common conflicts between parents and kids. And now, Session 1, How do you raise a teenager? Here's Jim Hancock.
Do you ever wonder what it takes to be a good parent? Not just a parent. You'll recall that the qualifications for that are painfully low. But a good parent. Andy Dillard tells a story about a college student who approached a famous author with the question, do you think I could be a writer? Well, I don't know, the author replied. Do you like sentences? Maybe that's a good place for us to begin. When you look at your own children, what is it about them that you really like? Are you stuck in that we-they mentality that says the kids are the bad guys and the only way to survive this is to circle up the wagons and just outlast them? It's not such an uncommon point of view. Mark Twain said it perhaps better than anybody else when he suggested that when our children turn 12, we should put them in a barrel and feed them through a hole. Then when the child turns 16, you plug the hole. But our kids are not the enemy. If Psalm 127 is correct, and if it isn't, then we're in the wrong movie, our children are gifts from the Lord. But I wonder, do you have as much difficulty believing that as I do sometimes? Are there times when it would be easier for you to see your kids as liabilities than as gifts from God?
I've told them, I said, if you forbid me to see this guy, I'll go behind your back and see him anyway. So on that level, they know that this relationship means a lot to me. Whereas on another level, by saying things like, your relationship is too far ahead of where we think it should be, and until you get married, it's going to be that way, makes me want to get married tomorrow.
I don't know, I guess God just gave me the wrong parents and just don't get along, and so there's a lot of stuff missing.
When I've been too angry to listen and I've been shouting and being unreasonable and I haven't been very logical in my thinking, she always points it out to me, and then she tells me I was scared to tell you, and that's probably the thing that's the hardest for me to hear at this point, is that she's actually scared to tell me that she's angry.
Everybody experiences failure, at least some of the time. And we're not here to make ourselves feel worse. We're here because there's good news for parents and kids alike. And it's obvious news, but easy to miss. The news is this. We're all doing this for the first time. Neither we nor our kids have to be perfect, just progressing. And we have a heavenly parent who's deeply invested in the growth of all of his children, no matter how old they are. Kevin Huggins is the author of Parenting Adolescents. He's a pastor, a youth worker, a counselor to parents and kids. He does seminars on parenting adolescents. More than that, he's a parent himself. He's not just a man who knows a great deal about adolescence. He's a man who's in this with us. If we ask you to give us one key principle for parenting, where would you start?
I think I would go to the Ephesians 4:29 principle. Let me just read that verse for you. Ephesians 4, verse 29. It says here, "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." If we paraphrase that for parents of teens, you might say, don't let any unwholesome response come out of your heart, but only what is helpful for building your adolescent up according to his needs. I'd say the principle would be to respond to your adolescent on the basis of what his needs are, what he needs at the moment, and not be controlled by your own needs as you're responding.
Okay, fair enough. I'm a parent. My kid has entered adolescence at the same time that I'm entering middle age. He's on the ascendancy while I'm starting to descend. Where do I start? How do I shift my attention from my needs to my child's needs effectively?
Well, to a large degree, I think that very often parents are operating not aware at all of what's controlling them as they respond to their kids. What controls us as we respond to our kids is often very complex. There's many different parts of us that are going on all at once. In my book, I talk about a story in which I was writing with my daughters, my two oldest daughters. And I leaned back as they were in an argument and told them that they just lost the privilege to speak for the next 15 minutes. My oldest daughter responded in a way that she never responded when she was small. She said, "This is a free country, and I'll speak when I want to speak." Well, in that moment, Paul would call me, according to the Ephesians 4:29 principle, to respond on the basis of what my daughter's needs are. But there's so many things going on inside of me. I'm having so many needs at the time. I have the need to be reassured that I'm not losing control. I have the need to be reassured that I'm not a failure as a parent. I have the need to be reassured that this isn't the beginning of the end of my relationship with my daughter. I have all this fear, all this shame going on inside of me. And to somehow separate myself from that and respond in a way where I'm taking into account what is my daughter's needs, that's very, very difficult. That takes a high level of maturity, a kind of maturity that I think that God is trying to develop in our lives as parents, especially through bringing adolescent children into our homes.
Okay, talk to me about that somehow. How do I somehow separate those things?
Well, it's a matter, first of all, of becoming aware of what controls you at the deepest parts. It's a matter of stopping before you respond. I love many of the examples for example, of Nehemiah in Scripture. Nehemiah was constantly being faced with these high-pressured situations to respond to as the people he was leading. And yet, he almost always reflected before he responded. To stop and reflect and say, right now, as I respond, what's going to be my goal? What's going to be my purpose? Am I responding out of protecting my own selfish interests? Do I want to just get the kid under control? What's going to control me as I respond? What's going to be my goal? In a matter of reflecting and becoming aware, first of all, what's going to control you as you respond. That's really the first step to using the Ephesians 4:29 principle.
So what did you do when your kid said it's a free country?
Well, I responded automatically without reflecting. And I let that angry part of me, the part of me that fell out of control, respond. And I put her in her place with some kind of overpowering sentence and left her just more convinced than ever that Dad's kind of an unsafe person to be around. She withdrew just that much more from me. It wasn't until a few days later that I began to reflect on what happened in the car that I began to realize that, well, I really failed my daughter. I sinned against her in those few moments because I violated the Ephesians 4:29 principle. I responded on the basis of what was my need to feel in control, not on the basis of what her need was at the time.
Then what did you do?
Oh, well, then I went back and chatted with her and asked her forgiveness and asked her to start talking about what was going through her mind when she said that sentence. What was she thinking about at the time? And she had all kinds of feelings about being treated by everyone as a child. She started talking about the fact that she felt like she was a child around everyone except Kathy. Kathy's an adult friend of our family. And I said, well, what's Kathy do? How's she different? Well, she talks to me like I'm a real person, like I'm an adult. And as we talked more and more, I found out so much about some needs that she felt to start being treated like an adult. But she was right. I treat her like an 8-year-old in the car.
Interesting. What's the most hopeful thing that you could say to parents? To me, I'm a parent.
Adolescence is literally that second chance, second crack we get at anything we missed the first time around. Isn't it great that we don't have to sit around and worry about, well, I wonder what I did wrong as a parent when my kids were little. I wonder what I missed. Because literally anything you missed will come back and bite you on the nose during adolescence. You get a second crack at it. So it can be a wonderful time of growing, but a hard time. But a time I think that God in His genius has designed to help adults from becoming complacent in their growth. This time bomb that God has planted in our home goes off. It's called puberty. And it sends our children into fantastic changes. They begin to change physically and intellectually and emotionally and spiritually, all kinds of changes. Now, that requires of us a much higher level of maturity to parent than when they were small. And if we allow God to use this, He can begin to teach us on a deeper level how to love. In a real sense, the faculty members of this course, graduate course on maturity, are our kids. And if we decide to dig in and say, I'm not changing, or if we decide to send the kids away or just distance ourselves from them, we miss out on one of the greatest opportunities I believe we as adults have to grow, and that is learning how to love our teenage children. I've mentioned to some parents at our church that I think God is a whole lot more concerned about the maturity level of parents than He is kids. And the reason being is that He's got years left to work with our kids, but He's running out of time with us. The good news is that most of the ideas about life that kids come up with during their childhood years are open to be reshaped and challenged during adolescence. And that's what gives parents such a great opportunity during adolescence to work with your kids.
The dad and 2 daughters you're about to meet are ordinary people in an extraordinarily complicated relationship. What's wrong with this picture? How did the older sister come to have more influence over the younger sister than the father has over either of them? They've got a big job ahead. If you were in their shoes, where would you start?
The most difficult things for me to discuss with my parents are drugs and sex. They think that I have completely gone through my drug stage, that I never do drugs, that I don't drink.
I am extremely worried about Laura's attitude about smoking, drinking, sex, drugs.
I couldn't tell them all the drugs that I've taken. They know that I've experimented with a couple things, maybe. And I'm not someone that you could possibly call a druggie or anything like that. I don't, take drugs habitually or even that often.
We feel that our older daughter has experienced an awful lot. We don't know the details, nor do we care to ask them, but we are just worried sick about it so often, and just pray she'll come through it all.
The toughest thing was getting my parents to let me do the things my friends were able to do, because they had all kinds of privileges that I didn't have, and that was probably one of the biggest struggles that I've ever had with my parents, was trying to earn more privileges and get them to loosen up a little bit, because they've always been really, really strict.
One child is easy to hug every day. The other child, no way. So that kind of communication is very difficult for me, given the personalities I'm dealing with, entirely different personalities in my girls.
I think that what my parents want for me is what they tried with my sister to be, and they want to try again because my sister didn't turn out what they wanted, I guess. or what they were trying to raise her to be. And instead, they're going to try it again with me.
For my youngest child, age 15, I'm not sure there is a challenge yet that she has not accepted and worked through.
They play psychologist, you know? They sit there and they're just like, so tell us how you feel. You know, I don't want to tell them how I feel. I want them to realize how I feel.
My older daughter, now 18, had an extremely difficult adolescence. I think that her biggest challenge was dealing with rejection and jealousy from friends, so her so-called friends.
It's back to the same thing. The thing that I've always wanted most from my parents is my freedom. Just because they've always been so strict with me.
They have to accept that I want my freedom and that I am getting a more busy social life and I'm going out more and I'm going to want a later curfew and things like that, and they're going to have to hopefully adjust to that.
Sex is something that my parents and I can talk about sometimes for a very, very short time, because it's really sort of a controversial thing with us, because they think that no one should have sex until they're married, which is fine, and I respect that. But, you know, they have to understand that I have sex and that I'm very careful about it.
She's been through a lot more than I have, and she has a lot of experience, and, you know, I've totally had conversations. I don't hold anything back from her. You know, she knows everything, and that I can't tell my parents.
After baptism in church, let them grow up through church, and they'll end up being incredibly marvelous Christian kids, clean-cut, straightforward, and just marvelous in every way we can possibly conceive of as Christian parents. Well, I think we learned long ago that we cannot push, and I think we had to learn this with our older daughter, particularly.
They were forcing me to go to church every Sunday, and I couldn't deal with that. And so I decided that I just wasn't going to go to church, and they could deal with that. And I was rebelling against them. I cut off all my hair. I bleached it all white. I shaved one whole side of my head.
The hardest thing about being a good parent is realizing that we should not have, for me, not have expectations in concrete when we become parents. That our plans are so and so, and our kids therefore have to behave so and so and so and so right down the line. That may not be anywhere near how it will in fact turn out or should turn out.
When we had to go to the therapist, I only had to go a few times, but to the shrink, and they took it as a lesson. So I guess that they could be the shrink, you know, and I just don't understand the point. Why can't they just be, I'd rather them be my friends than parents.
Hard as it is to find hope in what you've just seen, it's not hopeless. These people can't make the past go away, but they can start from where they are today, from the truth about their relationship. What is the truth about the relationship between you and your child? Have you told that truth to yourself and to God? Have you told it to each other? Whatever you're feeling now, take heart. In the weeks ahead, we'll look at how to move from where we are towards where we want to be as people and as parents.